You're listening to the Third Down Squad podcast, the best international news podcast for the National Football League. We're your hosts, Derek, Josh, and Toby. Let's get you ready for new set downs on Sunday.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Third Down Squad podcast. It is actually the first week of preseason football wholeheartedly, so we're all excited for that. The Colts are obviously facing the Buffalo Bills on Thursday, and the Saints are facing the Vikings on Friday. Toby, why don't you go ahead and tell us real quick, who are you looking at for that game, their first preseason game?
Well, the biggest question for the Saints right now is basically their center position after Max Unger decided to retire after last season. So there are a couple of questions there. Of course, they drafted Eric McCoy this year in the draft, but they also have their, the only player that was on the roster playing center before was Cameron Tom, and they also got Nick Easton from the Vikings, who they're playing this week. So that's kind of a three-way battle who is going to be the starter at the start of the season. So I'm expecting to see all three of them on the field on Friday against the Vikings. Of course, they're probably not going to hand off the ball to Drew Brees, but more to Teddy Bridgewater and Taysom Hill, maybe also a little bit to JT Barrett. But I'm not sure if JT Barrett is even re-signed yet because they cut him for some roster reasons a couple of days ago. But usually JT Barrett is one of the guys who is out and in of the roster during the training camp time, so I expect him to be back in there as well. But some other plays I'm looking at, or other personnel group I'd say, is the wide receiver group, especially after the starters of Michael Thomas and Ted Ginn Jr., both of which will probably not play this week, or will definitely not play this week. So that's one of the questions that the Saints had to answer last year, who is really that third guy behind the two of them to step up and produce for the Saints. There's Traquan Smith. Of course, there's Keith Kirkwood, which got hurt a little bit during training camp already. And there are a couple of other guys that kind of get up there. I'm thinking of Butler, who is kind of the name of training camp so far for the Saints. And that's basically it on the offensive side. On the defensive side, I'm curious to see the nickelback position, which is really crowded right now with Patrick Robinson, who's coming back from injury, probably not playing. PJ Williams is fighting for a spot there, and the new draft pick in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is also trying to get in there and maybe get on the field. A couple of good news from him from training camp so far. So the Saints might try to get him on the field as much as possible during the regular season. But I just want to see him on the field, what he can really do and what position he's really playing, because he's more of a safety, not a cornerback. And yeah, that's kind of interesting to see what they really want to do with the defense this year.
Gotcha. Josh, what are you looking for the Colts' first preseason game?
I'm looking for how I should say two things. The first being the offensive linemen behind the normal starting line, just to see how well they hold up in a situation like this. Should the worst happen to any of our offensive linemen, and I hope it doesn't happen this season, we have a nice, healthy season. I just want to see what the backups are made of, just so that we could get a feel for what if somebody goes down, who can replace them, like the next man up kind of. The second is the defensive line. For, as you know, Derek, it's kind of been lackluster here and there sometimes. Now, Tyquan Lewis, who was out majority of the season last year due to an ankle injury, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was an ankle injury. It sidelined him for a good portion of the start of the year, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking for him to actually come out of his shell and actually perform, because he's got a lot in the tank. This is his proving ground, to show that he wasn't just like, a late second round pick, that he actually has some. And now that I'm talking about, there's one more person from the wide receiver group, Kane. We didn't see anything of him, so this is his proving ground to show that, he's the biggest guy we got for Andrew Luck, because Ballard saw something in him that not a lot of people really saw because they took, if I'm not mistaken, Callaway before Kane.
Mm-hmm.
Who,
Yeah.
even though Callaway is from a different school, but
Yeah.
still, back to what I'm saying. His ACL injury is done. He's healed up from it. He's ready to go. There's something he's got to prove, and I think he's going to prove it in the preseason, and then finally become that. I want to say the number 2 wide receiver because we're going to have Paris Campbell in the slot. That's what I feel.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I go as far as to say Kane would be the number 2 guy, but he definitely will make some have his presence felt in the lineup. He'll definitely be in some packages for sure. If training camp is any indication of where he's at right now, I mean, he was absolutely phenomenal in training camp. They said he was probably, other than the rookie cornerback we just got in Rock Ya-Sin, he's been the best player in training camp all the way around. And if people are saying that he's not even 100% yet of what they expect him to be, wow, I can't imagine how good that would actually be for Andrew Luck. But the big thing I'm looking for in this preseason game is to kind of see some of the rotation at the linebacker and the secondary, because the secondary has, for most Colts fans, has kind of been the topic of the offseason. We know who our starters are, but who's going to be the ones that come up in the rotation, make the cut, who's going to provide that other impact when they bring in certain packages. And, you got Quincy Wilson. Rock Ya-Sin has definitely been amazing in training camp so far. He's been great. I still can't wait to see that. I'm interested to see what kind of linebacker packages they bring in and who they have in the middle, because Bobby Okereke is going to be a name I want to see. Nate Hairston, Matthew Adams at the Sam linebacker spot. I want to see some of those. And I do want to see some of the defensive line as well. I'm more interested in the defensive side because I know what our offense is going to bring. I'm not too worried about that. I'm just interested to see what we can bring on defense, because there's still, even though we're certain on what we still have some uncertainty of who we can possibly bring up. And I do think it'd be great to see some of these young guys the Colts have and see who can shine and who can make their presence felt. All right, now we move on to our first topic of the day, and that is Tom Brady, where the 41-year-old quarterback, is he 41 or 42 now? So to say
I think Brady's
42.
I think he's 42,
Yeah.
right?
He's 42.
42. Well, the 42-year-old just got another extension to the NFL. That's right, folks. Tom Brady's not going anywhere. This man is going to be sticking around for at least another 2 years, if health permits that. He has a 2-year, $23 million extension. It's kind of funny, just a side note, that Tom Brady and Giselle have posted their house on the market. They're officially selling their house, and it is worth $39.5 million. So sorry, guys, that's a little bit out of our price range, unfortunately. But
not with that attitude.
Well, Tom Brady got his extension, so obviously he's not going anywhere. Josh, we'll start with you on this one. What do you make of this extension? What does this tell you?
It's telling you that they're buying time for the right quarterback in the draft. It's put him in at 44 years old, and this might be the one time where they might be willing to actually trade up in the draft to get the kid from Clemson is all high on.
I can never imagine Bill Belichick trading away picks like that for something. I can never imagine him doing that.
But it's just telling you, though, that they believe that their backups are the right type or the right fit at the moment to lead the Patriots once Tom Brady steps aside. So keeping him on for 2 more years, they at least solidify the quarterback position and can actually build around it, because if you can take Sony Michel, a running back with great speed but an injury history that stretches back as far as the eye can see, and turn him into a Super Bowl, winning running back with, knee problems galore, the Patriots are on to something that the other teams just aren't. They're just playing it nice and cool.
Mhm.
So by making, like, going back to my thing with the quarterback position, at least making sure you have your all-time great quarterback nailed down to 2 more years. You can build around it for the future quarterback to take up the reins. So
Right.
this is a smart decision by Patriots in this.
All right, Toby, what do you think?
Yeah, I see it similar as Josh. I mean, yeah, it's just something to buy time for the Patriots to find the next guy after Tom Brady and kind of get that core around him, like find the next Gronkowski. Of course, he's gonna be missed by the Patriots this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, but one thing I'm not too sure of, if Brady is leaving the Patriots, whether or not Belichick will stick around with the Patriots after the post Tom Brady, or in the post Tom Brady era up there, or if Belichick just says, okay, I'm not with Tom Brady anymore, I'm just gonna leave, and you can deal with that from now on, whoever the new head coach might be up there. So I could see them just playing out the last couple of years in the Brady Belichick era, and maybe they're even planning, like Josh said, trading up with a new head coach. I mean, it's basically Belichick who's against trading up, but I feel like with the Patriots after Tom Brady, they have to change in their philosophy a little bit, or not just a little bit, I mean drastically, because they're not going to get one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time right after Tom Brady. I mean, how lucky can you be? It's the Patriots nonetheless, but okay. I mean, we don't know who's going to be around in 2 years on the quarterback market, who has already NFL experience or in the draft. So maybe the Patriots know more than we do right now and already have an eye on a guy that is coming out of college in 2 years. Who knows? But I feel like that extension is just buying time right now with one of the greatest, or the greatest, quarterback head coach duo.
Yeah, I mean, this extension is just another example of why Tom Brady is pretty much considered the GOAT of quarterbacks. I mean, I get it that this extension, obviously he's 42 years old. Nobody's going to give a 42-year-old an extension that's really big. Obviously, we knew that was coming. But this is kind of how Tom Brady has played his entire career. He's never had a massive contract. Hell, Eli Manning is making more money right now than Tom Brady is right now. And nobody in their right mind would even think of taking Eli Manning at this moment. Tom Brady's still a top 5 quarterback in the NFL right now, even at the age of 42. Obviously, his physical attributes are starting to diminish. We start to see that year in and year out. It's starting to slowly turn down, but he's still got that. He's still got the killer instinct. He's still very smart. So he, again, even though he can't throw the ball 70 yards down the field anymore, he's still really smart and he still makes very few mistakes. And that's ultimately what his team needs. This contract, again, is just another one of those things. Like you guys said, buying more time gives the Patriots a little bit more chance to think of what they want to do. Obviously keeping the money small so that way they can invest more money into the team. Because like you said, they have some injuries and some players that they lost from last year that they need to fix. So ultimately we'll see where the Patriots go. I mean, I am wondering if Tom Brady's going to make it all the way through that extension, but then again, he's been proving us wrong year in and year out. So, all right. So next topic that we have is Ezekiel Elliott. That's right, boys. We now have a Le'Veon Bell 2.0 situation here. It is now confirmed from Ezekiel Elliott's crew that he will not be returning to the Cowboys and he will not play in the 2019 season if he is not given a new contract. So he will officially sit out until given a new contract. Ultimately, the question remains, and Toby, will start with you. What do you do now if you're the Cowboys?
I mean, I've said it before. Zeke is the cornerstone of your offense or your entire team right now. So he should be your priority number one to give a new contract to, not just Dak Prescott or Amari Cooper. And I mean, they said they want to give all three of them a new contract, which will be difficult because all three of them are asking for quite some money there, and they all three of them deserve to get paid. And of course, we know the Cowboys, and they like to overpay for their quarterbacks, so there's even less money to go around for Zeke and Amari Cooper. And I mean, that's the one thing I feared after last season with the whole Le'Veon Bell stuff and him sitting out the entire season for a new contract. That other top running backs or top players will do the same thing. And now we're just 1 year later, and the exact same thing happened with probably top 3 running back in the league in Ezekiel Elliott, who is threatening the team to not play the entire season. So it sucks for everybody who loves football as much as we do, because we want to see the best players on the field when they're healthy, and Zeke is healthy. And so, in my opinion, it just sucks for the fans, for basically for everybody other than maybe Zeke himself, who gets a bigger contract out of it. So I understand why he's doing it, but on the other hand, I really don't like the players basically abusing their power to kind of taking the fun out of the game.
It's how basketball does it now. It's the NBA's way of doing it now.
Yeah.
It really is. And before we get into Josh, I just want to say also, it really sucks for people who want Zeke in fantasy. If ultimately he doesn't play. I was
just about to say that.
Yeah, I know. I knew you were going there. Somebody was going to say it. If Zeke doesn't play, it really is a Le'Veon Bell 2.0 at this point. I know for certain that if he doesn't get a contract before the season starts, none of us will be picking Zeke Elliott in the first round. Probably won't pick him for at least a couple rounds until we know later on. But
are you kidding me? I want to waste $120 in fantasy.
If you guys don't know what he's talking about, go to the last episode we did. You'll see why we were talking about it. But anyway, Josh, go ahead.
Now, this is one of those tricky things where, we all know that when Zeke's not playing, Dak takes a hit statistic, Yeah. But it seems like we're the only ones that kind of see that, and everybody else around Dallas and, like inside the company or sees Dak as more valuable than Zeke, where I see Zeke at more valuable than Dak, because once Zeke and Dak started to click, Dak's numbers went up. And you see, this is kind of like one of those tricky things where it's like both play an integral role into the team's success, but Zeke is the lifeblood of that offense. He's the one that gets it churning and going and actually makes Dak seem more relaxed in the pocket. Now, when he's not out with the team, and like this is even when he plays and they put in the backup, you can kind of see Dak just kind of bide time until Zeke is rested to come back out. He never goes for like the dagger, the touchdown or the first down. Every time Zeke has taken a breather, he plays very conservatively, as if not to like throw an interception or, miss a pass or miss the wide receiver. Without Zeke, the Cowboys are going to be in rough waters. Like, they're going to be stuck in the ocean without So I think that they're going to get it done, but it's going to be Jerry Jones and the Cowboys who break before Zeke breaks, because the ball isn't Zeke's core. It's what he wants to do with that ball. And right now, what he's doing is he's sitting down and saying, all right, if you think he's more valuable than me, let him lead the team, putting a spotlight on Dak to perform. And he can't play conservative like he used to. He actually has to ball out. You just can't get Alfred Morris, and assume that he's the next Zeke. He's not. So that's what I think.
Yeah, and to kind of continue with your analogy, it's almost like he's up by 2 points. The Cowboys have to steal the ball in order to have a chance to get him back. But in order to do that, they have to take the gamble because he's up by 2 and there's 20 seconds left. He's running the clock out. I mean, it really is that at that point now. Look, I've said it so many times over the last few podcasts. Zeke Elliott is the number 1 running back out there right now. You can make the argument that Saquon Barkley or Saquon Barkley might be the only argument that you could legitimately make at this moment is better than Zeke. It's the only one. And of course, Saquon Barkley is going to get paid here soon at some point because who else do the Giants have to pay at this point? They don't have anybody else to pay at this point for that. And Saquon's already making good money. But anyway, to go back to your most valuable thing, Josh, let's just kind of think about this for a second. Let's say we took both of them off the team realistically. We take Zeke off the team right now. Obviously, that defense for Dallas is obviously really good. One thing I heard from First Things First this morning, Nick Wright and them were talking about this situation. They actually had a good and Nick actually had a decent point about how this could potentially turn into what the Steelers were last year. You know, we said, oh, Le'Veon Bell being out is not a huge deal. It's really not. Well, they went from a 13-3 team to a 8-8 team that didn't make the playoff. Or 9-7, I apologize. But either way, I don't know if the Cowboys have that happen to them because they have a better defense and they still have a decent sounding offense. But ultimately, you take Zeke off of that offense, Dak will struggle. The whole offense will struggle. If you took Dak off the roster and you didn't have a backup for anything at that point, then obviously the Cowboys are going to be horrendously bad on offense. I mean, most valuable, it is very, very hard for me to sit here and say that a running back is more valuable than a quarterback. Unless your quarterback is one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL, then you would have the argument that Zeke would be a lot more valuable than a Dolphins quarterback or Tampa Bay's quarterback or whatever. But Dak is around mid-tier quarterback, so he's ultimately not a scrub. But either way, you're right. If the Cowboys are going to give him so much money for doing nothing so far, then why can't they just say, let's give it to Zeke too? You pay the best players in the game the money. I'm sorry if anybody doesn't agree with that, but you pay the guys who are the best at what they do the money that they want. And it's not like they have to pay Zeke $100 million. They don't have to pay him that. They just paid Todd Gurley a 4-year, $60 million contract. That's the best contract in the NFL right now for running backs. They only have to give him 70. I've been saying it all along. I said a 4-year, $70 million contract. That would still give you enough to where you could give Dak Prescott a long-term $25 million deal contract, and then you would still have money to be able to pay Amari Cooper $15 million a year for, say, another 3-4 years. Now, I know that kind of leaves Amari Cooper at the short end of the bunch, but, I mean, he's not the most valuable of those 3 guys. So, but that still gives you that, and then you still have a little bit of cap space that you can work things around. I'm sick and tired of just hearing people say that, you know, Zeke doesn't deserve this money. For the amount of time and the amount of abuse his body has taken for this Dallas Cowboys team, having led the league in rushes every year since he's been in the league, I'm sorry, this kid totally deserves it. I'm sorry, the Cowboys need to get this deal done. They do, because they're gonna be worse this year if they don't have Ezekiel Elliott. They're going to be worse. There goes your chances of winning a Super Bowl with it.
You know what this reminds me of? Or at least what Zeke reminds me of in this situation? Sean Alexander, when he carried that Seahawks team to the Super Bowl against the Patriots, or the Steelers. Remember that?
Yep, I do remember that.
How he pretty much, he was the league leader in rushing in rushing yards, and he pretty much carried that team to that Super Bowl.
Right. And it's not like
Zeke could do the same thing if given the chance.
Right. But I mean, it's not like the Dallas Cowboy team. This Dallas Cowboy team will most likely still be. They might be the front runner in the NFC East. Still, you could potentially make that argument. They'd still have the chance to make it to the playoffs, but they certainly are not a better team if they lost Ezekiel Elliott. They get drastically worse on offense, which does make your defense worse than what it would be last year. All right, so now we're going to move on to another running back who is no longer in a Saints uniform. Mark Ingram, who was just asked about the Saints' chances of winning a Super Bowl this upcoming year, obviously showing love for his former team. But he says that the Saints will not win the Super Bowl this year, may not even make it, but not for the reasons that you would think. Obviously, we all remember what happened last year. And now Mark Ingram says that what happened last year will ultimately disdain the Saints' psychic so much that it will distract them from being able to stay focused long enough to make it to a Super Bowl. And if they even somehow got there, to actually win it all. So I feel like it's only right that we start with Toby on this one. Ultimately, Toby, do you agree with Mark Ingram? I mean, do you think he has a legit point with that?
I don't really think so, because usually the way that the Saints mentality, and especially the mentality of Sean Payton is, and how he prepares the team for it, is if something bad happens against one of those teams, usually makes it a point to motivate the team and not get those players down because of what happened a year ago or something. And I believe that with how the Saints played, if you take 2 years ago, with how that divisional round ended, Derek and I talked about it just before the podcast, because the Saints, of course, are playing against the Vikings this week again, with how that one ended with the Minnesota Miracle and how they played against the Vikings last year. It's as the divisional in the regular season. You could see that there was kind of a little bit of bad blood against the Vikings, and that the Saints just wanted that revenge game and win the game against the Vikings. So I feel like it's more of an advantage really for the Saints, and especially with a team that you have so many young players on. I mean, a lot of those guys are still on their rookie contracts. If you're looking at Marshawn Lattimore, Alvin Kamara, of course, Michael Thomas just got off the rookie contract, but all of these guys are not that long in that league, and usually to face that kind of adversity in big playoff games, it takes a couple of years to gain that experience. And I believe that a lot of those Saints players now have a lot more experience to handle those kind of the disappointments in big games, that I feel like it's really an advantage for them in the long game. And I can't really agree with Mark Ingram on the comments that especially the ending of the Saints-Rams game last year in the conference championship game is a disadvantage for them, and that's the reason why they won't win a Super Bowl. I feel like it's more the reason why they win a Super Bowl, because they know how it feels like to lose a game in that way, and you don't want to experience that feeling not one bit in after a game that you play in the playoffs. So I think they're trying really hard to avoid losing a game like that again. So right. I mean, for me and how I feel like the Saints are playing, it's a motivational piece for them. So
yep. Josh, what do you think of Ingram's comments?
I'm with Toby on this one. It's not going to hinder them at all. They've been through a lot worse. So to say that one play is going to ruin their season, it's a bit much. Even for when, it might have an impact on, the rookies and the people into their second year, but they'll learn to just, shake it off and walk away anyway. Because you have Drew Brees, and if you don't trust Drew Brees with the football, something's wrong with you. You have to reevaluate your life choices at that point. But to say that one play, was he, in regards to the Minnesota Miracle, that one, it probably only hurt one person. That was a cornerback that missed it. The whole team is fine. They'll move on. Or safety.
Yeah, safety, yep.
The safety that missed that one hit on Stephon Diggs. Now, in regards to the Rams game, as Toby likes to hate with a dying passion, that one might have hurt a little bit more because there's nothing you could do. You were powerless because the referees ultimately hold the decision. Was it a good decision? Absolutely not. But that one might. But again, Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, everybody, they're just going to shake it off, keep moving forward. So it's not going to hinder them from getting to another Super Bowl. Not at all.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in, you fault under things that do happen to you. I mean, that was one of the craziest endings to a game that we've ever seen. One of the biggest missed calls, I think we can all agree, was everyone could agree, even without a camera, that it was, it was an easy missed no call. I'm also a big believer that you do grow from adversity in situations like this. You got, Josh already said it. You got Drew Brees, who's been there, done that. I don't think it'll affect him. Michael Thomas is a guy that loves the adversity. He takes it every day and he cherishes it, and he uses that to make himself better. And I think this is the year that he will prove to everyone else again why he was the highest paid wide receiver in NFL history. He's going to go out there. He's going to do what he does. And obviously this Saints roster is still one of the most well-rounded rosters in the NFL. They have every piece that they need in order to make it. And, again, it's kind of one of those things, at the end of the year, they won't talk about it much, or at the beginning of the year. They won't talk about it much then. But obviously when the Saints most likely get to the playoffs and, they'll get to where they want to be, everyone will start asking them, here we go again, this time of year. This is where you guys kind of didn't necessarily falter. It just, things just didn't take your guys' word for it. But ultimately, it just depends on how you go through that adversity, how you get through all the mental images that go through your head when you think of that. And like Toby said, I think Sean Payton will have that past his mind once that kind of goes through. They'll think that was last year. We can't do anything about it now. Let's just go out. Let's do what we did last year that should have won it for us. Let's do it again. Let's go out there, do nothing special, nothing different. Let's go out and play Saints football. So ultimately, I think, could it affect them? Yeah, because, again, it's a traumatic event. It's something that really, really hurt a lot of people, including the Saints players. But I do believe that there are enough mature and veteran guys on that roster, including their head coach, Sean Payton, that are capable of looking past it and just being able to keep everybody focused for that time being.
Yeah, and just before we jump to the next topic, I just want to, since we're on the topic of the missed call in last year's NFC Championship game, and I mean, last week we saw the first review of a pass interference play in the Hall of Fame game between the Broncos and the Falcons, and I gotta say that first challenge in the first half, I think it was by the Broncos, I believe, that challenge.
I believe it was for the Broncos, yeah.
Yeah,
and I mean, how they decided that one, I gotta say, even as a Saints fan, and I really don't like that review. I did not like how they reviewed that play and called that, or made that decision stand with that little contact during the pass play. I think they really need to work on that during the preseason a little bit more. And if they officiated during the regular season like they did in the Hall of Fame game, that's a rule that's gonna go away after this year.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, because it's going to slow the game down dramatically.
And it
With each
changes a
little
lot of
thing.
calls that, majority of people will say, oh, that's tip tap stuff. It's stuff that shouldn't have been called, but you have a much bigger perspective on a camera when it's slowed down and it repeats. So,
Yeah.
that will be something that's interesting. Last thing before we get into news around the NFL, the Redskins running back groups. This is kind of something I've been thinking about a lot recently. Obviously, Adrian Peterson is coming back. Chris Thompson's definitely going to be their second guy. You have Darius Geis now coming back after his ACL injury that ended his season last year before it even really started. What do you guys think, real quick, just what do you think is going to happen, particularly for Adrian Peterson? Because Geis is probably going to be the number one guy. You have Chris Thompson, who's going to be obviously the all-purpose back. What do you think happens with Adrian Peterson in this lineup?
I think that he ends up being, I want to say, possibly the third down back, where they're going to limit him because of his age, but they're still going to use him because they need him. Mm-hmm. So I think it'd be wise to use him on third downs to get first down because he's more of a power back than a speed back now that age has caught up to him. Yeah. So that's what I think they're going to do with Adrian Peterson.
Toby?
Yeah, I kind of feel reminded of the time of Adrian Peterson being on the Saints roster, and I think it's basically the same. If Darius Geis, of course, can stay healthy on the field, he kind of feels like a Mark Ingram type of guy, and Chris Thompson more of the Alvin Kamara that came in with the Saints in that year that Adrian Peterson was on the Saints as well. So Adrian Peterson, it's gonna be the odd man out of that group. And yeah, he maybe get those carries on third down or for a first down. But as we saw when he was on the Saints, Adrian Peterson is a running back who needs a couple of snaps to kind of get into the rhythm. So if you just give him maybe 5 or 6 snaps in a game, he's not going to get up to speed in that game. So he's not going to produce. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's going to end like 2 years ago with the Saints. It just feels like the same situation there.
Yeah, I kind of agree with the same thing as Toby there. All right, so quick news around the NFL. Jaguars linebacker Anuwala is out for the season with a knee injury. That is an unfortunate one for the Jaguars, who obviously have lost a lot of people already from the offseason, and having a linebacker go down is a big blow. And apparently Antonio Brown suffered frostbite from a cold therapeutic chamber treatment that was going on earlier this week. As random as that sounds, it is quite crazy how that works. I think thankfully they were able to treat the frostbite before it got too bad. Don't know really the severity of that or what it might do to hinder his time. I don't know right now, but ultimately that's probably the weirdest headline that I've saw this week.
Yeah, frostbite. But it feels like an Antonio Brown thing to do.
Yeah, I know, right?
I'll tell you what it is. It's those Pittsburgh winners biting him in the ass one last time.
Do you guys see the preview for the Hard Knocks episode? His son asked him where Ben Roethlisberger was.
Yeah. I don't play with him anymore.
So and he's like, we play with Derek Carr now, and then his kid says Derek Carter. Carter. He doesn't know it's Carr. It's Carter. That's hilarious. All right, last thing before we wrap this one up. First pick in fantasy football, now that we know that Zeke's no longer going to be the number one thing, at least at this moment. Josh, we'll start with you on this one. First pick, first player. You can have anyone you want. Who are you picking?
Travis Kelce. Because he's going to be the top tight end now that Rob Gronkowski is gone. And all the other tight ends, not to take anything away from them, they just don't come out and jump out at you, You have Njoku, Ebron,
Zach Ertz.
Yeah. But Travis Kelce, to me, seems like the next Gronkowski type. He's already got the ability to make big plays, can be clutch. He's got Patrick Mahomes.
I gotcha.
So I'd say if you really, it's running back and tight ends are the hardest things to cover in fantasy. So I'd cover tight end first because running backs you can get plenty in trial by fire with them, but tight ends come once in a while.
Toby?
I know it's the boring answer, but I gotta go with Saquon Barkley. I mean, he's the only guy on the Giants roster. They're gonna rely on him on passing downs as well as on run games, and I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he actually gets a record for scrimmage yards this year.
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna go with the boring answer here too, Saquon. I was trying to think of a wide receiver that I would pick first, but I'm sorry. If you're gonna give me Saquon Barkley with the first pick, I just, especially with what the Giants situation is now, they're gonna rely on him just as much this year as they did last year. So ultimately, that's what I would do too. All right, well, that is it for this podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at T3DS_NFL and follow and listen to us on Spotify, the Third Down Squad. And as always, guys, peace.
See ya.
Later.